New Reptilian World Order, New Dawn, the world's most unusual magazine. What if planet Earth was ostensibly run by shape-shifting reptilians? Believe it or not, this is out of political science fiction scenario has become a focus of historical researchers as well as spiritual visionaries. In fact, the resonance of corroborating evidence from science and metaphysics has a synchronicity that is nothing but astonishing. Serpents and flying dragons have, of course, been a staple of ancient myths and legends of indigenous people around the world. Their assumption has always been, however, that they are a metaphor of an elegy and a literal description of actual beings. But what about the abomination of Jesus and John the Baptist when they charted the generation of vipers and serpents? What if they saw these creatures with their spiritual vision, the overshadowing of humans by astral beings from another dimension? How would they communicate this vision to others? And what about the stories from the book of Enoch and the forbidden books of the Bible which refer to the Nephilim, literally those who were cast down, and the watchers, the so-called fallen angels? Sumeria, the cradle or test tube of civilization. Scholars and historians have been totally confounded by the abrupt rise of the Sumerian culture nearly 6,000 years ago and the fertile presence of the Tigris and the Euphrates River. This sudden civilization seems to appear out of thin air and refuses to conform by the popular historical theory of linear development and cultural evolution. Historian Professor Charles Hapner squarely faces the issue when he writes that today we find primitive cultures coexisting with advanced modern society on all continents. We should now assume that 20,000 years ago, while Paleolithic peoples held out in Europe, more advanced cultures existed elsewhere on Earth. Likewise, the rise of Sumeria has been a major puzzle. Joseph Campbell in The Mask of God writes, while stunning abruptness, there appears little Sumerian mud garden, the whole cultural syndrome that has since constituted the germinal unit of all higher civilizations of the world. William Irvin Thompson put it even more succinctly. Sumer is a poor, stoneless place for a Neolithic culture to evolve from a peasant community into a full-blown civilization, he writes, but it's a very good place to turn the plains and the marshes into irrigated farmlands. In short, Sumer is an ideal place to locate a culture already having the technology necessary for urban life and irrigation agriculture. A more stunning conclusion was reached by Professor Samuel N. Kramer, one of the greatest Sumerologists of our time. He reviewed the table of contents from the tablets of Sumer and found each one of the 25 chapters described as Sumerian, and in fact world-first type of achievement. The Sumerians had the world's first medicine and pharmacopoeia, the world's first brain surgery, the world's first agriculture and farmer's almanac, the world's first cosmology and astronomy, the world's first law codes, and they utilized highly advanced technology capable of sophisticated metallurgy, smelting, refining, and alloying, as well as petroleum fuel refinery. Most importantly, the Sumerians were responsible for the world's first genetic engineering. Like a mystery without a suspect, the Sumerian story remained a riddle until historian-archaeologist Zechariah Sitchin published a remarkable book called The 12th Planet, 1979. His subsequent series, entitled The Earth Chronicles, Sitchin describes in great detail the crossbreeding program of the Sumerian gods through the genetic manipulation. Having spent 30 years of studying Sumerian, Assyrian, Babylonian, and Hittite texts of the Old Testament in original Hebrew, Sitchin deciphered the ancient scripts, transcribed them and translated them, and finally transliterated and translated them. His conclusion, Sitchin writes that Sumerian civilization didn't appear out of thin air. The forerunner of Greek and Roman civilization was initiated by a highly advanced race of extra-planetary colonists who came to Earth, established their settlements, and began their single-minded pursuit of wealth and power by mining gold and other minerals necessary to sustain their high-tech, high-maintenance lifestyle. And who were these colonists? The Sumerians themselves described them as gods of heaven and earth. They were also called the ancient gods or the olden gods. According to Sumerian law, they had come down to earth from heaven. In the Hebrew text of the Old Testament, the Sumerian gods of heaven and earth are referred to as the Nephilim. The Sumerians themselves are called the colonists, the Anunnaki. The Bible and Strong's Concordance does not mention the Nephilim specifically by name, but Nelson's Concordance has several listings. Sitchin translate the biblical verses from Genesis 6:4 as, "The Nephilim were upon the earth in those days and thereafter too, and when the sons of God cohabited with the daughters of Adam, and they bore children unto them, these were the mighty ones of eternity." And what does Nephilim actually mean? Normally translated into English as giants, the word stems from a Semitic root, NFL, to be cast down. It means exactly what it says: those who were cast down upon earth. Contemporary theologians and biblical scholars have tended to avoid the troublesome verses, writes Sitchin, but Jewish writers at the time of the Second Temple did recognize in these verses the echoes of the ancient traditions of the fallen angels, tracks of the Nephilim and the Watchers, apocryphal texts like the Book of Enoch and pseudepigrapha, and other politically incorrect so-called lost books of the Bible reflect the precise knowledge of fallen angels on earth. In fact, scholars maintain that there were two accounts of separate falls of the angels. First, there was the archangel rebellion against God and his fall through pride, in which was followed by other angels, the Nephilim, and second was the story of the angels who fell, lower their vibration, and began their incarnations on earth, thus lasting after the daughters of men, the Watchers. According to the Book of Enoch, a band of angels led by Sumerian become enamored of the daughters of men and decided to go after them, saying, "Come, let us select ourselves wives from the progeny of our men, and let us beget children." So that they all took an oath, 200 of them, and descended to earth. Then they took wives, each choosing for himself, who they began to approach, and with whom they cohabited, teaching them sorcery, incarnations. Moreover, Azrael taught men to make swords, knives, shields. Then Michael and Gabriel, Raphael and Cyril and Uriel looked down from heaven, and saw the quantity of blood which was shed on the earth, and all the iniquity which was done upon it. Indeed, the bloodshed, including ritual abuse and human sacrifice through endless wars, were the hallmarks of these creatures. The invasion of the serpent people. In a book called Flying Serpents and Dragons, the story of mankind's reptilian past, R.A. Boyle, a former NSA cartographer, writes, "From a combination of ancient secular and religious sources, it is possible to piece together the story of our ancestry, which lies in the coming of the alien serpent gods or astronauts who colonized Earth many eons ago. In fact, the evidence lies in the complete reappraisal of the legends, myths, and history of the world. Sumerian legend of the Gilgamesh and Aga points to this interaction of humans and serpents, and of course there are well-known serpent gods from the Indus Valley of the Nagas and serpent race of ancient India, and the Hindu epics of Rama and Madhava, which also deals with the serpent gods. In Chinese history, Viking describes how man and dragon live peacefully together and even intermarried. And the serpent gods in the American mythology are described in the Mayan books of the Chilambalam, where Itzamana, the serpent god, is revered by the people of the serpent. The story of St. George overcoming the dragon in England and St. Patrick driving the serpents out of Ireland is also part of the Christian iconography. Too many coincidences point at a pattern which has been seemingly willfully ignored by the ivory tower mainstream academics and historians. Before the flood, according to Boule, the Anunnaki genetic engineering was done by combining the characteristics of the native ape man or Neanderthal with their own Samaritan nature, producing the so-called Adam of the Old Testament. This Adam was half human and half reptile, however, and being a clone could not reproduce himself. Berossus, the Babylonian priest, writing in the 3rd century BCE, Athens, claimed that man's ancestry and origins can be traced to the Onans, an amphibious creature that come out of the Persian Gulf to teach the arts of civilization to man. Berossus called them the Antiote, which translates to the repulsive ones in Greek. He also refers to them as Mercerus, an abomination, writes Boule. If tradition had been invented, and more normal attitude would have been to glorify these creatures as splendid gods or heroes, yet the fact that they choose to describe their ancestors this way argues for the authenticity of the account. The Sumerian gods regarded men as a convenience and nothing more, says Boule. He supplied their wants, kept their cities, and provided cannon fodder for their various military ventures. Sound familiar? The gods could be cruel and unsympathetic masters. They considered humans merely as unruly children, not more important than pets, to be governed ruthlessly and without sentiment. The ruthless policies of the NWO reflects this ancient bias, and the inconsistent propaganda of the population crisis exists on the planet, and that's the best way to remedy the situation is through wars to kill off the cannon fodder, or through abortion to kill off future useless eaters, those who consume resources without the value-added productivity that masters of the earth require. Boulay contends that the Old Testament begins at the Sumer, and there is a large body of religious literature beside the book of Genesis which deals with the period before the deluge. He cites sources such as the 3 books of Enoch, the book of Jubilees, John Gnostic's teaching, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Haggadah, and the old tradition of the Jews, the rabbinical writing, and the works of Josephus, the books of the pseudepigrapha, especially the book of Jubilees. What was the Serpent of Eden? Carl Sagan cryptically titled one of his books The Dragon of Eden, but the ancient Jewish legends describe the Serpent of Eden as man-like. In other words, he looked like a man and talked like a man. What does this mean? In the section of the Haggadah that details with the creation describes a serpent who inhabited the garden before the creation of Adam, and an upright creature that stood on 2 feet and was equal to the height of a camel, writes Boulay. The serpent was man-like in many ways. He was tall and stood upright on 2 legs. He did all the work of the gods, particularly the mining and the agricultural work, and above all, the serpent had intellect superior to man. These are all the attributes of the Anunnaki. Boulay says that according to the Haggadah, the bodies of Adam and Eve had been overlaid with horny skin, and moreover Adam's skin is said that it was bright as daylight and covered his body with a luminous garment. Adam thus had the outward appearance of a reptile, with his scaly and shiny skin. It was for this reason that Adam and Eve did not wear, nor did they need clothing for protection or comfort. The reptilian appearance of the biblical gods was a well-kept secret, and only occasionally it is perceivable in the Old Testament, writes Boulay. In a radical interpretation of Scripture, he says that in the Haggadah, the source of the Jewish language and old tradition, it is revealed that Adam and Eve lost their lustrous and horny hide as a result of eating the forbidden fruit. The Gnostics reveals to the early Christians relate that as a result of eating the fruit, Adam and Eve achieved knowledge, part of which was to realize that their creators were beastly forms. The Haggadah also explains what happened in the garden after Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit. The first result was that Adam and Eve become naked. Before their bodies had been overlaid with horny skin and enveloped with a cloud of glory. No sooner had they violated the command given to them than the cloud of glory and the horny skin dropped from them, and they stood there in their nakedness. Even the bizarre ritual of circumcision may have a reptilian connection. Just as the serpent achieves long life through sacrificing and living off part of himself, so man may also be saved by ritually sacrificing part of himself, continues Boulay. The rite of circumcision also served as a perpetual reminder to man that his true origins lay in the serpent god creator, and that he existed at the forbearance of these gods. Why Cain killed Abel? In a fascinating reassessment of the well-known Bible story of Cain and Abel, Boulay proposes an alternative rationale. For instance, in the Apocalypse of Adam, a Gnostic document of the 1st century CE, Adam reveals to his son Seth that the Lord who created us created the son for himself, and Eve your mother. If the deity was the father of Cain, while Adam's side Abel, writes Boulay, it would explain further events. Cain would be semi-divine, part reptilian, and more godlike. About the birth of Cain, this document observes that Eve bore a son, and he was lustrous, a description of the shiny, luminous hide of the reptile gods. The apocryphal version of the text also describes Eve's dream. She tells Adam, "My lord, I saw a dream last night. The blood of my son animals called Abel being thrust into the mouth of Cain and his brother, and he drank it mercilessly. And it did not stay in his stomach, but came out of his mouth. They got up to see what happened and found Abel killed Cain. The crime of Cain was apparently not only committed fractile, but to eat the flesh and the blood of his brother. This behaviour seems more reptilian than human, since Cain was sired by the deity, unlike his brother, who had Adam as his father, concludes Boulay. And it says in the Bible that Cain was Adam's begotten son, meaning to be given. It wasn't of Adam. The serpent gods. What did ancient gods look like? The coming of Anunnaki coincided with the end of this period as the earth began to dry out and the meat-eating dinosaurs and small mammals appeared, says Boulay. The reptile gods needed moisture and warmth, and probably the reason why civilizations were founded at the mouth of the great river systems, the Nile Delta, the Indus River Valley, and the Tigris-Euphrates system. In appearance, the serpent gods were tall, at least 8 to 10 feet, and walked on 2 feet. They had a tail like a reptile and a tough hide, somewhat like a lizard, with a large amount of horny or scaly skin. The hide was generally lustrous and smooth, somewhat like a chameleon, and probably varied in different hues of green and grey. They had short horns on their head, which they considered to be a sign of divinity. Humans were repulsed to them because they were hairy, soft skin and bony limbs. The sons of the serpent gods, the Nephilim of the Bible, which descended before the deluge and mated with the human women, also dabbled in genetic engineering, concludes Boulay. Eventually, mankind will have to learn the truth about his origins and face the fact that his gods and ancestors were reptiles, truly monsters by any of our current definitions. There will be a great cultural shock, as we have never seen before, Boulay predicts. The reptilians among us. The researchers into reptilian phenomenon concluded that at least some originate in the Draco star constellation, writes in The Biggest Secret. There are 3 suggested origins of the Anunnaki reptilian intervention in human affairs. They are extraterrestrials, they are inner terrestrials who live within the earth. That's part of the hollow earth theory. They manipulate humanity from another dimension by possessing human bodies, and I think they are true. His book is a repository of mind-bending, paradigm-shifting information which sounds like a grey deciphered movie. Until you read the evidence, his premise is simple. What if the global power elite are part of these reptilian bloodlines, still controlling and ruling planet Earth as their own private galactic fiefdom? These bloodlines become the British and European aristocracy and royal families, and thanks to the Great British Empire, they were exported across the world to rule the Americas, Africa, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and so on. These genetic lines are manipulated into positions of political, military, media, banking, business power, and thus these positions are held by lower fourth-dimensional reptilians hiding behind human form or by mind puppets of the same creatures. These same reptilians have been occupying the bodies of all the main players in the conspiracy going back to ancient times. The obsession with interbreeding within the Babylonian Brotherhood bloodstream comes from the need to hold the reptilian genetic inheritance and therefore maintain the vibrational connection between the human body on the 3rd dimension and its controlling force on the lower 4th. It was to hide the truth that they arranged the destruction of the ancient historical records, texts, and accounts over the centuries as they ravaged and raped the native societies of the world. The reptilians wanted to destroy all memory and records of their early open existence and control in the past. If they could do that, humanity would have no idea that they were being controlled through physical bodies that look like human by a 4th dimensional force. It's like that movie They Live. Incarnation of the lizard people, with a background in author Barahan Clow excels in a shamanic cosmology, an intuitive storytelling technique that integrates history, legend, and myth using her own internal guidance. In her 3rd volume of Mind Chronicles trilogy, called The Signet of Atlantis, she also tackles the problem of the lizard race from her own perspective. Clow refers to the physical incarnation of the race on Earth. They, the Anunnaki, nevertheless have received a measure of control over the planet's surface, she writes. Most notably, they have achieved the ability to incarnate. No longer will they have to persuade people to build temples in order to link up to their own control centers. No longer will they require to channel to enter Earth. Now they can become humans themselves. The various non-physical lizards creeping around the canals of Baalbek are considerably attracted to the idea of taking human form through incarnation, she continues. They look forward to creating fear more directly. These monsters are not content to lumber around as fourth-dimensional reptiles, occasionally eating someone up. Much more appealing to them is the idea of actually entering the third dimension. In the 20th century, for example, actually becoming Adolf Hitler, who was a Rothschild, a Charles Manson, a Stephen King, or the making of the 20th century film that creates fear of act of eating, the Night of the Living Dead, they will even boldly show themselves for who they really are by creating a movie called V. Other sci-fi movies with the theme of alien reptilians Earth include The Arrival, They Live, and Alien Resurrection. You must realize that the Holy Land is a laboratory or a stellar control patterns, writes Clara. In temple secrecy, we were taught everything about the visitors, but this information was taken out of the Bible. For 300,000 years, the central agenda by the Nibiruans consists from Nibiru, also called Marduk, have been to control the earth and use it for its resources. It's also a special time, the return of humanity's spiritual powers and the choice of self-transcendence. The return of these architectural powers is also a result of your ability to perceive wider spans of the light spectrum, she concludes. The expanded vision is your key to integrating all the dimensions into your awareness. This broader awareness is natural, but it was once taken from you by the gods, the Nibiruans, and other visitors. These demigods, who felt disconnected from their source, narrowed your perceptive abilities in order to help themselves materialize on Earth. The Nibiruan mindset that has poisoned planet Earth has most recently manifested as the reptilian attitude that American political leaders call the New World Order. This is a mindset that believes in scarcity and limitation, where the Earth is actually abundant and unlimited. This is the mindset that would throw all the people into crocodile pits. The world's power brokers are gluttons who control more resources than they need in order to protect themselves against the scarcity they fear. Clow calls them the World Management Team, which she defines as the individuals in the third dimension who are controlled by the Anunnaki, who impulse them to carry out the plans that benefit Nibiru and not Earth. All individuals working in team agencies such as the Vatican, secret society, banks, governments, school systems, medical systems, and many business are agents of the Anunnaki, unless they are conscious of the Anunnaki vibrations and do not carry out their plans. In recent days, the World Management Team has been calling itself the coming of Christ. The second coming of Christos, the time has been to choose life over death, writes Barbara Hand-Clow in her book of Heart of the Christos. The death we've comes from the paralyzing fear of the black face, Orion. In the wars with Orion, pain and separation were first experienced, and after that point many souls cease to be, but all changed with Christos. A being of such love and compassion came to earth, that now all souls have access to the desire to be alive just to experience the love of Christos. The fallen angels have sidetracked themselves by playing around with various experiments which have been creative but without wisdom, and the third dimension has become increasingly complex, especially during the last 5,000 years. Angels have amused themselves by being voyagers of the results of materialization. Technology with no divine inspiration or wisdom has been the latest project of the fallen angels. After all, Christ himself admonished his students, "Be ye wise as serpents." What did he mean? The rape of the Anunnaki. According to many leading experts, sex has gotten a bad name ever since the trauma of the Anunnaki, who came to this planet and raped the women of Earth. In the Palladian agenda, Barbara Hand-Clow writes the Anunnaki selected women to have sex with them so they could actually birth themselves into incarnational cycles of Earth, and that was something that had never occurred before. Prior to this time, she contends that all sex was very natural. You easily merged electromagnetic fields in your physical bodies, and the vibrations of the moon, sun, and planets flowed through your Kundalini channels. You were drawn to each other by planetary affinations in your birth charts, and merging was always easy and pleasurable. Sex with the Anunnaki was forced and unnatural in so many ways because there were very few energy affinities. You became confused while the gods felt the Kundalini energy for the first time. They loved it. Male gods even had a lot of sex with each other and with few female goddesses once they found out what sex felt like on Earth. All imbalances between men and women today come from these energetic imprints from incompatible energy fusions from these ancient times, writes Clow. Your loathing for reptiles also comes from this phase of evolution because the most embodied Anunnaki were very reptilian, and those Anunnaki were the ones who could mate with human females. Serpents, dragons, reptilians, coincidence or conspiracy. Satan and the fallen angels are often pictured as serpent reptilians themselves. In one of the seemingly uncensored passages in the scriptures, Jesus rebuked them, saying, Ye serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them ye shall scourge in your synagogues, and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of the righteous Zechariah the son of Bacchus, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. Matt 23. The bloodlust and the modus operandi of the embodied watchers has changed little in the 2,000 years since. More references to the generation of vipers are in Matt 3:7, Matt 12:34-35, and Luke 3:7. They are also called princes of the worlds, despite censoring, tampering, and editing the Bible. Code words or euphemisms for this reptilian race in the Old Testament includes terms like the wicked, mighty men, the giants, and the evildoers. Lizzie's and the Human Dilemma. Barbara McCartney, the author of Bringers of the Dawn, Earth and the Family Light, comes to a similar conclusion about Earth and the reptilian agenda. The created gods who have been ruling this planet have the ability to become physical, though mostly they exist in other dimensions, she writes. They keep energy at a certain vibrational frequency while they create emotional trauma to nourish themselves. You have only dealt with gods who wanted to be admired and to confuse you, and have thought the earth as a principality, a place that they own out of galactic fringes of this free will universe. Macaronik semi-ferociously calls these hybrid, part human, part reptilian beings Lizzies. These beings, who are neither spiritually informed nor learned in spiritual ways, deny the existence of a spiritual force, she writes. They have developed specific principles and technologies that scalar the laws of spirituality. It is possible to become a brilliant master of manipulating matter and reality without understanding spiritual connections. After all, there's nothing like a race of godless, materialistic beasties to diddle with your planet, and your current world events reflect on this reality every day. Transcending the virus of the scabrous religion. Is religion itself then a virus insinuated into society by alien extraterrestrial species for a purpose of societal control? In his inspired inspirational book, Not in His Image, Gnostic Version, Sacred Eschatology and Future Belief, John Lamb Lash deconstructs the belief system of the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, while explaining the metaphysical teachings of the so-called Gnostics, who have historically been disparaged as pagans. After all, even the word Gnostic means to know it all. A pejorative invented by the Roman Church to put down their rivals who call themselves children of Seth, despite the anti-Gnostics' propaganda for at least 2,000 years. The Gnostics' enlightened and holistic worldwide has now become increasingly relevant because it describes so precisely spiritual conflicts of our day. The Gnostics taught that religion is the elaborate production of aliens who sold the concept of an off-planet savior, redeemer god, or an absentee landlord god, if you will, responsible for the patriarchal and fractal mindset endorsed by the Abrahamic religions. In his groundbreaking exposition, the Gnostic perspective on Abrahamic religion mythology, Lash writes that the Gnostics understood the origin of redemptive religion. Himself chose a certain man named Abraham and made a convent with him, but proposed a different way to view it. He is the demigod, aka Yahweh or Jehovah, a demented pseudo-deity who works against humanity. Salvation by superhuman powers, rather than through the divine potential innate to humanity, is the hallmark of the extraterrestrial religion. Due to the Abrahamic religions promote the reptilian alien agenda, and there are salvationist dogmas and doctrines of the Abrahamic religions, the works of gods working against the spiritual evolution of humanity. The Gnostics of this god, their name for the demigod, a pseudo-deity who claims to be the creator of the natural world, identified with the biblical father of God called Yahweh or Jehovah. In Lash words, they taught that he is demented pretender who works against humanity as the leader of the Archons, which have been variously described as soulless beings or astral mental parasites that exaggerate human error and intrude upon humanity by psychic stealth in order to propagate the ideological virus of redemptive religion. Salvationist theology, writes Lash, promotes a belief system, the demigod of the Old Testament, an arrogant, demented pretender who claims that humans are made in his image. These four words are the corporate motto of patriarchy, branded on the human soul. Made in his image signifies the total enslavement of humanity to an alien off-planet agenda. If the Gnostics were right, the rise of salvation was a unique mistake for our species, and not a new moral revelation. Nothing serves hidden controllers for the cover better than this message of cosmic love, a ruse to endorse and foster the victim-perpetrator bond. No matter how hard we try, we cannot derive a genuine message of love and goodness from divine paternalism. This is perhaps the hardest of all lessons that history can teach us. Is religion then just another stumbling block for the ever-winding road of spiritual evolution? The Gnostics' perspective was that this alien belief system, foisted upon humanity by the Archons, was a primary cause of the spiritual stagnation that humanity endures into the 21st century. Lash, on his website, metahistory.org, notes that the Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in 1947, contain explicit accounts of threatening encounters with reptilians. For instance, the Testament of Amram. I saw watchers in my vision, the dream vision. Two of them were fighting over me, saying, and holding a great contest over me. I asked them, "Who are you, that you have thus empowerment over me?" They answered, "We have been empowered and rule over mankind." And they said to me, "Which one of us will have you?" And I lifted my eyes and looked at one of them directly. His appearance was dreadfully frightening. His skin was multicolored, dark with glittering scales. Gifted with the powers of paranormal perception, such as remote viewing, Gnostic seers who had met and repelled the Archons observed the persisting presence of the reptilians among the Dead Sea cult of Zechariah, writes Lash. The first Apocalypse of James, which contains descriptions of face-to-face encounters with the reptilian aliens, warns that Jerusalem is a dwelling place of many Archons. Is it that the reason why the Middle East, especially Palestine and Israel, are still the scene of such a brutal warfare against the evolutions of terror? It becomes quite evident that the Gnostic-based imperial mysticism conflicts with the salvation-based Aramaic religions on many levels. The alien agenda of salvationism asserts that humans are in error, flawed, and sinful by nature, and require redemption and rescue from this condition by intermediary and Messiah, or through the observance of a strict ritual law, which empirical mysticism claims that divinity itself is a natural essence of human and can be revealed through a mystery school of initiation which can be used to combat this alien ideology. breaking the spell. So why does the spell continue? Obviously, the shedding of blood through satanic ritual murders and wars replenishes the energy they feed on. Negative emotions like fear and hatred are another source of their so-called power. The reptilians manipulate from the lower fourth dimension, the so-called lower astral frequency range, writes he. To control this planet, they have to keep the mass of humanity at or below a level and disconnect them from anything higher. Crucial to maintaining the human psyche in disconnection and ignorance is the manipulation of the low vibrational emotion, fear, guilt, resentment, dislike, or self and condemnation of others, which in the end are all expressions of fear. These are very emotions which resonate to the frequency range of the lower fourth dimension, and once we succumb to the domination of these emotions, we succumb to the control of the reptilian consciousness. I know a lot of people that seem to keep attacking using this. Ike says that the more you open your heart, the more powerful this flow, and the quicker you will synchronize with the rising vibration and transform into a higher state of consciousness. If you close your heart and close your mind, you will be resisting these changes, and more of your energy will be spent fighting these very energies that will transform your life and set you free. Maranac writes that the 3D world is headed for a collision of dimension, not a collision of worlds. A collision of dimensions, many dimensions, are going to come crashing into each other. The test, the initiation will come. Initiation will always mean to move through another reality, to conquer it, to transmute it. The battle of dark and light, good and evil, is only between portions of yourself. Continues. These portions are multidimensional extensions or reincarnations of the same collective of energies that you are part of as an individual. The avatars and the masters now permeated the gridwork of the world, bringing them their own tools for the teaching. This hierarchy works with love, cherishes who you are, and has been able to see through the time mechanisms that are keyed into the planet to know that consciousness is ready for the evolutionary leap. Isn't it an awesome choice then for the residents of Earth to be or not to be the Christ, especially in the face of tens of thousands of years of indoctrination? This includes lifetime after lifetime of hardcore programming that sin is our original legacy, as well as continuous mind control through religion that guilt and fear are mankind's natural estate. Sifting through the so-called tares among the wheat is the ongoing process with oneself and the planet as a whole. On a personal level, each decision to act ethically and morality is crucial. If fear is the lock on the virtual prison of the planet Earth, then love is the key to the soul liberation. The victory over the Nephilim enslavement of humanity, however, is eludible. After all, we're all playing for keeps. So, I was just going to share that one, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for watching. Hit the like, share, subscribe, or not. Thanks. Bye now.